Good morning, welcome to Headline Focus here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. It is Monday the 9th of July 2018. Let's have a look at what's making the political news today. And to start off with, what a big headline. David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, has resigned from government. He in fact made the announcement late yesterday, but of course we're now getting the news lines through, we're now getting a more understanding of why. Now in his resignation letter, he said the government's agreed Brexit policy makes it look less and less likely that the UK will leave the customs union and single market, and concluding that the country needs an enthusiastic Brexit secretary, and he couldn't be it as he didn't believe in the negotiating position. Really blunt words there, and really quite, significant in terms of his conclusions about the proposals. He said the general direction of policy will leave us in, at best, a weak negotiating position and possibly an inescapable one. Now, he's followed in his resignation by Junior Minister Steve Baker, and reports are that also Suella Braverman has also resigned her position as a Brexit minister as well, leaving the Department of Leaving the International of leaving the European Union, pretty sparse of politicians, pretty sparse of ministers going forwards. The question I suppose you've got to ask here is, well, David Davis knew about the Brexit proposal. Indeed, he knew about it in depth and discussed it in depth on Friday at this Chequers Crunch meeting. Why was he leave it until now, Sunday evening rather, to announce his resignation? Well, the answer is likely to be very simple, which is that he wouldn't be in control of the news headlines. He wouldn't get a real wave of news headlines if it's on a Friday evening, because who really is interested in the news necessarily on a Friday evening? But also in the context of the UK, the big World Cup match on Saturday, there was a lot of important events happening for a lot of people to be distracted by, and for his announcement not necessarily to get the impact that perhaps he wants it to be. On Sunday evening, however, he goes into the week setting the political agenda and setting the political narrative as well. Now it's for the Conservative Party, in terms of their internal divisions, to really take this news of the Brexit Secretary resigning and to react to it. So if you have a look at the next story, you get a real sense of Theresa May being really vulnerable now in terms of Prime Minister, in terms of the response this is going to have in terms of her leadership position within the party. Now, the Prime Minister thanked Mr Davis warmly for his work, didn't agree with him on the conclusions regarding his thoughts on the Brexit proposals nonetheless, but now she's got to be prepared, and she's preparing to plea to her fellow Conservative MPs for support. She's meeting the 1922 committee and all her Conservative colleagues later on this afternoon, and is during the Commons to make a statement to MPs about the success of the Chequers Summit and her new Brexit plan. But if you see in the Telegraph here, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's already made it clear he will not be backing the Prime Minister's new Brexit plan. Absolutely does not fit his narrative of what Brexit should be. And indeed, you've had Andrew Jenkins and Hazelgrove MP William Ragg also basically supporting Brexit Secretary David Davis, or former Brexit Secretary David Davis, and saying more ministers, more MPs need to be making more of this. This is really the watershed moment. That was really the trigger for everyone to really say what they really feel about the Brexit proposals. Now, the understanding is that all of these senior cabinet ministers would have had to go around Europe to sell this Brexit idea to ministers in Europe, and David Davis wasn't prepared for that. But the most important thing now is what's going to happen to Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary. He's been notably quiet since the Friday Chequers Summit. Is he going to be going anywhere? Is he going to be following David Davis on this, what some see as a very principled position, in that she doesn't believe in the Brexit position, and therefore he cannot go around Europe supporting it and backing it and saying how great it is for the UK? We don't know yet. There hasn't really been many lines from him, but certainly today you would expect this to be coming out a little bit later on, so certainly keep your eye on that. Finally, one more story then. The UK tells Germany to spend more on NATO. Now, Gavin Williamson, who's the Defence Secretary, is pushing for more imaginative approaches to NATO spending. Now, this is hopefully trying to calm President Trump's anger or frustrations over the NATO spending disparity that he sees between the US and other contributing states, particularly in Europe. Gavin Williamson saying you can spend more on railways and bridges that can be used by NATO in a crisis, as well as buying more helicopters and military trucks and things like that. Now, this comes off the back of what is another huge event later on this week, which you should be aware of, which is the NATO summit in Brussels. It's once every 2 years. It's particularly important now in the context of who's in the White House and the messages he's been bringing out in terms of NATO, in terms of not being happy over the US bankrolling it, or rather, as he sees it, disproportionately spending on it in compared to European nations. The fear is, of course, that President Trump will pull the trigger on this and withdraw the United States from NATO. That would be a severe move and a significant move, but in terms of the spending frustrations, he's made a continual point about it, and so it would not be unfeasible for him to make that call. Darren Williamson, of course, himself making more really pledges and pleas to the Prime Minister and government for more defence spending in the UK as well. This whole defence area is a really important agenda item this week in terms of what's been going on in government. That's pretty much it for today. You're up to date. Don't forget you can find all the latest on what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. But from me and all the team here at Core London, have a fantastic start to your week.